Tamagotchi, the sensation that swept the world in the 90s when the world was obsessed with all sorts of Japanese creatures. For those that don't know, Tamagotchi are digital pet devices where you took care of a little creature, and as you do, it grows and evolves based on how well you take care of it. They also died like a lot. They required constant attention, they ended up getting banned in schools, which made them die even more. It was a whole thing. Anyway, Tamagotchi would go in and out of popularity in the States, but stayed a constant in Japan, where new product and licensed product were continuously pumped out over the years. Well, with the Tamagotchi Uni out now in the States and being my current obsession, I decided to take a look at one of the funnier sides of the Tamagotchi media empire, Tamagotchi The Movie. Tamagotchi The Movie was written by Aya Matsui and directed by Joji Shimura. If you're a Pokemon or Dragon Ball fan, those names might be recognizable to you. Aya Matsui was a writer on Dragon Ball Z and the head writer for Dragon Ball GT, and Joji Shimura has done a lot of work on Pokemon projects throughout the years. The movie was released in Japan on December 15th, 2007, and fun fact, also received a US release in 2009. However, if you wanted to see it, you needed to buy the Tamagotchi Music Star Movie Bundle. Look guys, it's a $30 value. Does the movie even come with a case? The movie is about a young girl named Tomopopo who is on the verge of becoming a big sister. One day, she's sitting at her desk playing with her Tamagotchi when she gets called by her mom to deliver something to her. Meanwhile, in the Tamagotchi world, because yes, in this movie the Tamagotchi exists on a planet far away, but also as a toy that kids play with, it raises a whole bunch of weird questions. Mamechi, who essentially is the main character for the Tamagotchi franchise, think of him as their Mickey or Pikachu, working on a transportation device when his friends Kuchipachi and Maechi, god why are these names so similar, come into the room and mess up the experiment. The beam goes off and travels to our world where it hits Tomopopo and transports her to the Tamagotchi world, where she is seemingly stuck until they can get the transporter fixed to send her back home. Funniest thing about this part of the movie is Tomopopo is worried about being away from home for like all of 5 seconds because Papa Mamechi, Mamechi's dad, is like, oh, don't worry, I have a special device that will send you home at the exact moment you left, so you have literally nothing to worry about and there are no stakes, so just like, hang out and vibe. Mamechi's parents take Tomopopo in and she learns that much like her, Mamechi is also about to become an older sibling, with his baby sister due to hatch any day now. From there, the movie basically turns into a slice of life for the most part, with Tomopopo living in Tamagotchi world and learning about life there, going to school, and just generally vibing out. It's during one of these hangout sessions that we learn why Mamechi was building the transport array in the first place, and it's because he's scared of the dark and was hoping he could transport his own personal son from another universe so he would never have to be in the dark again, I guess? What's so funny about this is there's a part in the beginning of the movie where just as he's about to do the experiment with a transport array, he talks about hoping he's a good big brother, and so I had just assumed he was trying to transport something to help him be a good brother, so the ultimate reveal just got a laugh out of me that I'm not entirely sure was intention. After that, Mamechi's parents go out and leave him and Tomopopo to watch the egg, which should hatch soon. However, Mamechi gets so caught up in doing his homework that he doesn't notice Tomopopo has left the egg's crib open, and soon the egg escapes and starts rolling all over the city. What ensues is a pretty fun chase scene in one of the movie's more exciting segments. It all accumulates when the egg ends up on top of this big tower and Tomopopo and Mamechi manage to get it but fall off in the process. Mamechi's classmate Kuro Mamechi jumps in and manages to save them by using Kuchipachi as a trampoline. With everyone safe, the egg hatches and Mamechi is now a big brother. Side note, but Kuro Mamechi is such a strange presence in this movie. Throughout the whole thing, the movie will cut to him and pay really special attention to him in a scene, but he really doesn't do anything outside of that moment when he saves them. Like, the first time they show him in the class, you're like, oh, okay, this guy is maybe a school bully, or like Mamechi's rival. They're clearly based on each other design-wise, so surely he has to matter. Nope, he's just sort of there. He is one of the more popular Tamagotchi characters to try to raise in the toy, so I'm guessing that's why he's there, but if people love him so much, you'd think they'd have made him more of a part of the story instead of what is essentially a glorified cameo. Anyway, after that, the movie kind of turns into Interstellar.
And today I'm the
I promise this'll make sense, I swear. So remember when I said Memechi was trying to make his own personal sun? Well, he eventually succeeds, and this prompts Sunichi, the planet's actual sun, to leave, plunging Tamagotchi world into permanent darkness and giving it a cold. I need to note here that I don't mean cold in like the global warming sense, but like in the planet is actually sick because it's alive, it's got a giant snot bubble and everything. Wanting to make things right, Memechi hijacks a rocket to look for Sunichi. However, this rocket is also armed with the cold medicine to cure the planet. After learning this, our crew administers the medicine in ridiculous fashion and then proceeds to head into deep space to find the sun. While out in space, they come across Black Hole Chi, who almost absorbs them before being woken up from his nap and sending the crew back home. It's at this point that the movie remembers they have the whole Sunichi plot, and they conveniently run into him on the way home. It turns out since Memechi had the other mini-sun, Sunichi figured he could just take a break and went to a spa to refresh for a bit. See? Sick planet, plunge into deep space for a scarce resource, a black hole. It's basically Interstellar. As the movie winds down, everyone is celebrating when the movie also remembers that there's the whole Tomopopo needing to go home subplot chi. See what I did there? In the midst of celebrating, Memechi's dad tells Tomopopo that, hey, you can actually just hitch a ride on this comet that'll get you back home. The crew have a tearful goodbye as Tomopopo takes off into the night sky and then wakes up in her room on Earth. As she goes to leave, she gets a letter from Memechi on her Tamagotchi and sees the key Papa Memechi gave her, ensuring that her adventures on Tamagotchi World were in fact real. And that's the end. This is a strange movie. For as big of a phenomena as Tamagotchi is in Japan, you'd think that more effort would be put into the property's first theatrical outing. And listen, that's not to say that the movie is bad by any means, but it's also not great, and it doesn't exactly feel or flow like how you'd expect a movie to. Remember how I said early in the movie it's sort of divided up into like slice of life segments? Obviously, other movies have also done this before, but in the Tamagotchi movie, it almost feels like they were doing this specifically to tailor it for at-home viewing, where parents might be having to start and stop the movie a few times at their kid's whim. This ends up making each chunk of the movie feel really isolated, with little uniting them either thematically or hell, even plot-wise, until the latter half of the movie with the space subplot. And don't get me wrong, on their own, the isolated parts of the movie are really cute and some of them are pretty funny, but when you call something the movie, you set a level of expectation for it that this never really rises to. Tomopopo sort of feels like a waste too. Listen, fish out of water stories are nothing new, but when you're doing it with as wacky a property like Tamagotchi, it feels like there's a lot of fun to be had with a human in that setting. But once she's on Tamagotchi World, she just sort of takes a back seat. They sort of imply that there's some tension in her home life with her mother, and that like Memechi, she has some anxiety about being an older sibling, but those are never really explored and she never really gets a big character moment to let you know who she is. For all intents and purposes, Memechi is the main character of this movie. And speaking of Memechi, something that is so unintentionally hilarious about this movie is that so much of it is just events going into motion because Memechi screwed something up. Tomopopo gets sent to Tama World because Memechi's experiment has gone wrong. His sister's egg ends up in danger because he wasn't paying attention. The sun leaves because he summoned another sun because he's scared of the dark. It's just hilarious to me because if I had to try, and trust me, you really have to try to boil down what this movie's message is, I think it wants to be a story about how being a big sibling is tough and how that it's okay to mess up along the way. It falls so on its face spectacularly when it's basically Mamechi being an anxiety-laden mess and more or less either getting dug out of holes he made by other characters, or just getting out of them because of plot conveniences. Like, don't get me wrong, he's very cute, but he is a giant, messy disaster. More like Mamechi, am I right? I know I'm ragging on this movie a bunch, but it is a lot of fun to just sort of kick back and laugh at. The Tamagotchi world is rendered beautifully, and it's fun seeing what was once a bunch of tiny black and white pixels blown up into this lively, vibrant, and alive, and I mean quite literally everything is alive setting. The movie asks more questions than it ever cares to answer, and the plot is thinner than Maechi's single curly Q hair, but the aesthetics in Tama got enough to warrant a recommendation from me to anyone that's passionate about these little digital pets like I am. And maybe that's all the Tamagotchi movie needs to be. The toys themselves are never about beating levels or uncovering a heart-wrenching plot between you and your pet. You play with them very passively throughout your day and watch them go about their little square lives. I think it's easy in a post-Lego and Barbie movie world to expect these movies about playthings from our childhood to want to click on a deeper level, but sometimes playtime is just playtime, and maybe that's what the team working on this movie wanted to capture. So like, if the Tamagotchi world and the Tamagotchi toys are linked, does that mean every dead Tamagotchi toy equals a dead Tamagotchi back on the planet?